37 years old at the start of the season, won the MVP award back in 2016. Let's bring in our former Super Bowl champion, the two-time Super Bowl champ, Bryant McFadden. B-Mac, what's your take on the Colts upgrading from Wentz to Matt Ryan?
I love it, Chris. I love this move for both parties, especially the Indianapolis Colts. When you look at the balance they have on their team on both sides, look at the offensive line play, a proven number one running back in Jonathan Taylor. I mean, the structure clearly is there. It's in place. And think about this, Chris. Phillip Rivers, old man Phillip Rivers, over a year ago, led this team to the playoffs. Phillip Rivers is not mobile. He's not athletic. He's a guy that's just a pocket passer, similar to what we see from Matt Ryan. So because of the success we saw from Phillip Rivers, one would think Matt Ryan can provide the same type of success. This is a playoff caliber team. The reason they did not make the playoffs a year ago, Chris, was because their quarterback let them down in the final week of the season. So me personally, seeing everything that they have in place offensively, along with getting a former MVP, a franchise-like quarterback in Matt Ryan, you have to love the move today by the Indianapolis Colts.
And have to think that they have the best quarterback in the division right now. Their odds to win the division plus 125. What do you think of the fact that that is still a little bit behind the favorites in the Tennessee Titans?
I'm okay with that because I do believe and agree with what you just said. You know, I think Matt Ryan is the best quarterback in this division. And if you can get money right now on the Colts with those odds, take it and run with it. The unique thing about this situation and why I believe Matt Ryan will flourish in this offense, the structure in the running game. The last time Matt Ryan had a 1,000-yard rusher was 2016. You remember who that running back was? Devontae Freeman.
Wow.
It's been that long since he's had a reliable running game to take some of the pressure off his plate. Guess what? He walks into Indy. He got JT waiting for him, smiling from ear to ear. And you better believe Matty Ice is smiling as well because for once in his career over the last 5 years or so, he can actually hand the football off to a dynamic playmaker and allow him to do what he's been called to do and then make timely plays in the passing game when he's given his opportunity.
What about for the Falcons? What's next for them? And there are reports that Marcus Mariota could be the guy that they target to go after and maybe start next season.
I love that move because I think if you go out and get a guy like Marcus, you're basically, not saying that he is the answer for years to come, but he can kind of, keep some things contained, to say the least. The Falcons need a lot, Chris. They don't have any wide receivers. The offensive line play has been inconsistent. And defensively, not knowing exactly what they will be able to add based on the cap issues. Now they will have more money available with this trade happening today. But getting a guy like Marcus who's trying to prove to the NFL world that he is a starter is a nice move for Atlanta. And I think it's a better situation in having Marcus in a Falcons uniform than Matt Ryan because Marcus can make things happen with his legs whenever the offensive line break down. And over years past, we know that offensive line there in ATL will break down from time to time.
We have never seen quarterback movement quite like this in the NFL. You said you love this for the Colts, Matt Ryan going to Indianapolis. What's your favorite quarterback move of the offseason so far?
I mean, obviously, you have to like what Russell did going to Denver. Deshaun going to Cleveland, that was the unthinkable. But me personally, I love all of these moves. I'm not hyped about the Commanders getting Carson Wentz, but I'll say this. Let me throw this Matt Ryan move into the equation, and I'm taking this as my favorite move, and here's why. I think they have the best chance to be the Cincinnati Bengals of 2022, Chris. The reason why I say that, and what I mean when I say that is, of course, go back to a year ago this time. No one thought Cincinnati would have an opportunity to make a deep postseason run, better yet, get into a Super Bowl. But because of what happened in the structure, they caught fire at the right time. They were able to prove a lot of people wrong. I think the Colts have the same thing in place. The only thing they were missing was a quarterback, a smart, efficient quarterback. Everything else they have. Balance, they have. Defensive balance, they have. They have money available. And get this, they're only paying Matt Ryan $24 million this year. They still have enough cap dollars to go out and to improve their team. So I think based on what they did today and based on their division, the AFC South is safe to say it's only a two-team race. It's a two-team division. It's the Colts and the Tennessee Titans. And I love both teams and the moves they've made, but I think the Colts have an opportunity to be the Cincinnati Bengals of 2022. And because of that, this is my favorite quarterback move because I believe this move can get this team further than the Denver Broncos because of their division, further than Cleveland and Deshaun Watson because of their division. And if you look at what happened last year with Cincinnati, remember, no one thought they had a shot. I think the Colts can do the same thing this year in 2022, now adding Matt Ryan.
Yeah, what were the Bengals last year to win the AFC? 75-1, I think, and 150-1 to win the Super Bowl. The Colts Super Bowl odds have moved from 30-1 before the Matt Ryan trade to 25-1. Still, though, just barely in the top 12 in the NFL. How do you evaluate where they're at plus 2,500?
I think it's fair. And I think for the bettors that are tuning in right now, throw something on the Colts. Think about this. Look at the Colts roster right now. They have everything in place. I do believe they need to add a veteran wide receiver. Who knows? Maybe reunite Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. You know, there are some other pass catchers still available, but bringing in some more depth at that position is imperative. The same can be said in the secondary, bringing in another proven commodity in the secondary, but everything else is in place. The thing I love about the Colts and looking at these odds, plus 2,500, it's their division. It is their division. The Broncos division is extremely tough. The Browns, tough division. The Chargers, tough division. 49ers, Rams, all the usual suspects, they have a tougher task within their division than the Indianapolis Colts. And I love this, just the AFC South alone. We all should go to the window right now. If you're not by a window, go to your phone and get on your app. Put something on this right now. Plus 125, along with all the money they still have available to make some key additions to either side of the football field. Yes, the Colts right now is my sleeper pick. Not just to win the AFC South, but like I said, to make a deep run similar to what we saw from the 2021 Cincinnati Bengals.
25-1 to win the Super Bowl. BMAC says run to a window, sprinkle a little something on that. So far, Matt Ryan to the Colts is BMAC's favorite quarterback move of this offseason. You can hear BMAC and his cuz, Patrick Peterson, on the All Things Covered podcast. Download and follow. For more, we want to bring in Pete Prisco. Pete, the Colts have kind of had musical chairs at quarterback the last few seasons, going for another veteran quarterback. How big of an upgrade is Matt Ryan over Carson Wentz?
Oh, I think this is an enormous upgrade. Look, Carson Wentz wasn't nearly as bad as people portrayed him as being in Indy. I know he had a bad stretch run the last week, especially at Jacksonville, but this is an upgrade. Matt Ryan is a franchise quarterback. Now, I know he's coming to the end of his career, but you know what they say in quarterback land these days, 40 is the new 30. And so I think he can play three more years. He keeps his body in great shape. He works at it. He's diligent about it, just like all these other veteran quarterbacks. So I think it works for the Colts. I mean, you look around the landscape. You get a Matt Ryan for a third-round pick. I know it's a big salary, but still, it's a great move for the Colts. And you know what it does for them? It makes them a contender in my book. It makes them a Super Bowl contender. Now, they have some work to do, but this makes them a contender.
Really, in that AFC where it seems like all the great quarterbacks are, another great quarterback coming into this league, why do you think this makes the Colts an AFC championship contender?
Well, because I think it makes them a contender because they look at their defense was very good last year. Those guys are going to be better. Now, they have some work to do, don't get me wrong, but they were a playoff team if they win the last week of the season against Jacksonville. So they were clearly in the mix last year with Carson Wentz. I think Matt Ryan's an upgrade. I think they'll be in the mix again. They want to run the ball. They will take their shots down the field. The problem is they need to get some speed on the outside. I think they can do that in the draft. I think they can address a couple other positions in free agency still. There's still some good players out there. I think this makes them a contender. Are they the favorite? No, but it makes them a contender.
How about in the division with the Tennessee Titans being kind of the team to beat over the last couple of seasons, and their quarterback situation, Ryan Tannehill, he's been looked at as kind of a serviceable guy. Does Matt Ryan now make the Colts the team to beat in that division?
Well, Matt Ryan's the best quarterback in the division. Right now he is. I don't think there's any argument about that. You have two young ones in Trevor Lawrence and Davis Mills, and then there's Ryan Tannehill. A lot of people in Tennessee want to run out of town. They do not throw the ball well enough in Nashville for my liking. If it's not working with Derrick Henry, they have problems getting the ball down the field, and I think that was an issue last year when he got hurt. So, yeah, I think the Colts right now have the best quarterback in the division. Is he the best prospect in the division? No, but right now he's the best quarterback in the division.
Okay, how about the Atlanta Falcons? One, what's next? And two, just a third-round pick, that's all you get? Are you surprised?
No, because I think a lot of this had to do with the contract. They wanted to, get rid of the contract, get that off your books, and start moving forward. And I think what this does is it means they'll play with a stopgap, and the stopgap will probably be Marcus Mariota. You hear Arthur Smith loves him, wants to reunite with him. He had him in Tennessee, or somebody along those lines. And then you draft a quarterback. I think it changes the dynamic of the first round. They have to get a young quarterback. Who is it? Is it Ryan Pickett? Is it Malik Willis? I think when you look at this draft now, and I just did a mock draft, I'm going to have to tear it all up and start all over again, because I think the Falcons are in play for a quarterback.
Absolutely have to be now with Matt Ryan out of town. Maybe they make a move for one of these other quarterbacks who could be up for grabs, like, I don't know, Jimmy Garoppolo, for instance. I mean, so many dominoes have fallen in quarterback free agency and trades. What's left to happen? What else is coming down the pipe?
One quick thing about Matt Ryan before I answer that question, but Matt Ryan was sacked over 40 times in each of the last 4 seasons. The man has been brutalized his entire career. He averages over 35 sacks a season, and he takes a ton of shots because he is a pocket passer. So I think playing behind the Colts offensive line, they do need a left tackle, will help him and will help that offense. As far as what's coming down the pike, look, I think you got to keep an eye on Jimmy Garoppolo. Is he going anywhere? Will he end up somewhere? Where does he go? What happens with Baker Mayfield now? Does anybody want Baker Mayfield? Is Seattle in play for Baker Mayfield? I think there's a couple guys still hanging out there, but for the most part, Jameis Winston will probably go back to New Orleans, but for the most part, I think the quarterback carousel is kind of settled in a little bit.
All right, so Super Bowl odds, there's been so much movement that odds, I mean, it's kind of going all over the place here. I mean, when you look at the favorites, and you look at all these great quarterbacks now in one conference in the AFC, and the Colts still 25-1. That hasn't changed at this point because of the trade. But should the Colts be moving up in your book, maybe to the left side of this screen?
Well, you got to remember, they play in a division that's not very good right now, and that's a big advantage. And you have 2 games against Jacksonville. Now, they've struggled with Jacksonville traditionally over the years, and you have 2 games with the Houston Texans, who are not very good. If you split with with the Titans in that division, you got 5 victories, or bare minimum 4-2. And so I think that's a head start on the good teams in the West, in the AFC West. Those guys are going to beat each other up. So there's a big advantage for the Colts in that division. It's not a good division. I think it's a 2-team division right now with the Titans and the Colts. And if you ask me right now, I'd probably lean to the Colts specifically because they have the best quarterback.
Pete, you love this trade, don't you?
I really do. I think it's a great deal for the Colts. They were in floundering. What were they doing? Where were they going? They didn't have an answer. They didn't want Carson Wentz, and you keep hearing that was mandated by the owner. He wanted him out. Well, they had to get a quarterback, and this is a team that has a lot of good young talent. Get a veteran quarterback in there and let him be the guy to carry that team. Matt Ryan's a tough guy. He's a physical guy. He's a great guy in the locker room. They will love him. The Colts will love this trade.
All right, Pete Prisco loves it for the Indianapolis Colts. He says they are now a contender, not just in the division, but in that stacked AFC. Looking at the quarterback carousel, which shows no signs of stopping right now. Of course, it started with the big bang, and Russell Wilson traded from the Seahawks to the Broncos. Carson Wentz was that Colts starting quarterback last season. They trade him to Washington. Matt Ryan now with the Colts. Deshaun Watson was traded to the Browns, and as of right now, Drew Lock appears to be the starter for Seattle, but I think that's probably going to change at some point.
Matt Ryan leaving Atlanta after spending his entire career there thus far, drafted back in 2008. So speaking of the draft, not necessarily the Colts, but what does this mean for the Falcons? They have the 8th overall pick, and Ryan Wilson has had them taking Malik Willis at number 8. They're the top prospects going into this year's draft, so the Falcons now be targeting a quarterback. Let's welcome in our draft expert, Ryan Wilson, to talk about this breaking news. I want to get your reaction to it because so far we've talked to a handful of people and all of them love it. What about you?
No, I like it too, and it's sort of funny, Amanda, because a few days ago the conversation was, okay, Baker wants to go to Indianapolis. Is that where he ends up? And then we started to hear rumblings that even though Matt Ryan was going to stay in Atlanta, or at least that Deshaun Watson had not gone to Atlanta, Matt Ryan may be looking to get out as well, and you can understand given how the last 48 to 72 hours unfolded for him. And then you sort of felt like the Colts made some sense, a lot of sense even, for Matt Ryan, perhaps even more so than Baker Mayfield. Obviously, Baker's still in his 20s. Matt Ryan's going to be 37 soon. That said, it just feels like the next step in the progression of the musical chairs at quarterback that we've seen Indianapolis go through since Andrew Luck. We've had Jacoby Brissett be the starter 1 year, Phillip Rivers, of course, and then Carson Wentz worked out last year. Now we're on to Matt Ryan, and it feels like, as B-Mac noted in the last segment, that this team is now in the mix for the division and, of course, a playoff run. They should have made the playoffs last year. Things fell apart at the end, especially with that Week 18 loss to the Jaguars. It's still sort of hard to explain. And now Chris Ballard and Frank Reich have moved on to Matt Ryan, who, as we've noted, had a chance to win a Super Bowl, got so close, didn't do it. And I think now this will be his next best opportunity to make a deep playoff run.
Let's go to the draft. Your latest mock draft hit just a matter of hours ago on CBSSports.com before all this went down. So there's going to be another revised version. In that next one, the Falcons, as I mentioned, the 8th pick overall right now, you have them taking a safety, Kyle Hamilton, out of Notre Dame. Will that change next week? What does this do for them in the draft?
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm sort of him and hawing because we got to figure out what Arthur Smith likes. We heard Pete Prisco say earlier that he has that relationship with Marcus Mariota, who may be the dark horse free agent candidate to be the bridge quarterback, but that doesn't mean the Falcons won't target one with that top 10 pick of theirs. I've been saying it for months. There's not a quarterback worth taking in the top 10. That doesn't mean it won't happen. Malik Willis, has the highest upside, so perhaps that's a guy you target there at 8, or maybe you take whoever the best player available is. If Kayvon Thibodeau slips down there to number 8, they have huge needs at edge rusher. Maybe you take a Garrett Wilson. They have huge needs at wide receiver. You can take someone like that will help whoever the quarterback ends up being. But the understanding with a guy like Malik Willis is that he probably needs to sit a year. We'll see how the team feels about him that ends up drafting him. But if you get Kenny Pickett there, he has a chance to start sooner rather than later. I like Sam Howell more than most people after going back and watching him. I don't think he goes that high. But they have pick 43 at the top of the second round there, and they could be targeting a Matt Corral or perhaps a Sam Howell there, depending on how those quarterbacks shake out in the first round. But when you're the Falcons and have a ton of needs, there's a lot of players you could target at 8 to make your football team better, and I think that should be the primary plan. That said, we see teams all the time fall in love with quarterbacks and ending up overdrafting some. Sometimes it works out, other times it doesn't, and we'll find out together in about 6 weeks what the Falcons end up doing. Wouldn't be shocked if it's Malik Willis, but I also would understand if they addressed other needs with perhaps a player that fits the value there at 8.
Let's go to the Colts and what this changes for their draft needs. If it does.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.